So here we are today with the complete root cellar book. Now this is one of my favorite topics, and we've got both authors here, Steve Maxwell and Jennifer MacKenzie, whom I just found out today had never met each other when writing this book. It was quite fun. Who knew the powers of technology that you actually do this all over? Because when you read the book, it certainly felt like you were right there doing this together. So well done. Well done to your editor. But the root cellar now is making a big comeback, I think, Steve. We're going to talk a little bit with Steve first about it, and then afterwards about recipes and things you can do in it. But I think, we've even built a very rustic one before, personally at home, and I wish I'd had this book because we would have made it bigger. I think that's sort of a big thing when planning anything, don't you? You should always make it bigger than what you...
Well, things turn out to be smaller than you think when you start using them. I think root cellars are making a comeback because they make such good sense.
Absolutely.
You can consider them like a wine cellar for food.
Yeah.
So for people that want to get more intentional about the kind of food they eat and where it comes from and the varieties of vegetables they're eating, then the root cellar lets them do that.
But I think we lost that, though, in a generation because of people were actually living in their basements now and turning the heat up in the basement. So It was no longer, the root cellar was always part of the home in the basement, and you'd have the pantry, the root cellar, and the wine cellar if necessary. But now you've got to rejig that and build it such that more purpose-driven thing. And that's what this book goes into. I mean, you've got a lot of plans and a lot of ideas.
Well, there's plans and ideas for root cellaring outside your house, which is the kind of thing
That's what I have, yes.
There's some ideas for converting a cold room, a standard subdivision home cold room, into something that will actually work.
Right.
Walling off a section of a basement for a larger cellar, building completely standalone walk-in outdoor cellars, and it would be.
Yeah.
And then also cellar spaces when you don't have access to the soil in any way to keep things cold, so electrically assisted cellars.
So if somebody's starting out, though, who literally, they go they go to the market. I mean, we're not all becoming farmers all of a sudden. And I grew up on a farm, and there's no way. I admire them. It's a tremendous amount of work. But you have access to great farmers around wherever you live, through markets, through wholesalers and things like that. So you can buy big bushels of things. So what should people, these sort of home people who are, looking to preserve their seasons that much longer, what do you suggest for just the starting out? I mean, there's obviously the Cadillac ones where they're going to be going over the top and everything's done, but if they're just starting out and want to try it in a modest way with, say, 4 bushels of different vegetables and stuff, what's the best way to get started?
Well, the best way is the cheapest and simplest way, which is what you've done, and that's to create some kind of outdoor pit of some kind.
Yeah.
That will preserve fruits and vegetables for a long time.
Well, March in our case,
and it takes a little bit of work, not very much money, and it'll give you a taste of what cellar is all about without having to rejig your basement or build a separate space. So that's kind of the easiest way to start. If you're confident that you want to do cellaring in some way, and you've got an under the steps cold room,
which a lot of homes have, do they? Yeah.
Well,
or not, maybe not the newer ones. Though.
Well, even the newer ones.
Do they?
The thing is, they're just there for show, really. They're usually not deep enough in the ground to work properly, so they'll get too warm in the summer and too cold in the winter.
Right.
And that's not what you want. So in the book, there are some plans and ideas for fixing that in an under the steps cold room, and that would be the easiest way of doing something in your home. It's not going to cost more than a few $100s and a weekend's work, really.
You say that so lightly. We had the digger in the backyard. We had everything. I had to bake cookies because he was there longer. Yes, well, it was a long process, but it was fun. I mean, But that said, though, there are certain things you can store, like things and things that you can't store together. So I can see how you must have a large enough root cellar, though, so that you can put some things together in part of the cellar and then some other things. Now, that said, some need very cold with moisture, some need more moisture than others. So how do you control? I know you brought some different things to control that humidity and the dryness.
Well, that's really the temperature and humidity. Those are the things that we're going for. And the ideal range of those things varies with what you're storing. The book's got ideal
it's
parameters
fantastic for that.
But it's not essential that you get everything spot on.
Right.
I mean, if potatoes or carrots will last the longest when it's just above freezing. If you're 5 or 6 or 7 degrees above freezing in your cellar, it's not the end of the world.
No, you're just going to ripen. You're going to have to use them faster.
That's right.
Okay.
So it's not a yes or no thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's on a scale.
Right.
Now, the easiest way to deal with this is to go for the things that store the longest, and the conditions that are appropriate for that.
Right.
So that would be a cold and moist cellar.
Mm-hmm.
So that would allow you to store carrots and potatoes and beets and root
Right.
crops optimally. Now, if your cellar is large enough, you can wall off a section so that you can raise the temperature and lower the humidity for storing other things. Or you can store the things that really need high humidity in containers.
Right. Oh, okay.
Because the vegetables, they give off a lot of moisture on their
Yeah.
own. And if you can contain that and monitor it with a humidity
Right.
gauge inside, then you can get moist conditions that you wouldn't otherwise normally have.
And you should
in the
never
cellar.
wash your vegetables before putting them away.
No.
I know, I did read that somewhere, and you confirmed it, because I mean, the dirt on them is good, but you don't want that moisture, being released, and plus it speeds up the process of them ripening or going bad quicker.
Sure.
doesn't it?
Well,
Yeah.
the thing about root cellaring is that you want to preserve the skin.
Yeah.
The skin is the really important part.
That's right.
And if you've got a bunch of carrots, they're going to come out of the ground with a certain amount of dirt on them. But if you take that off, you're going to be abrading the skin
Yeah.
and cutting it, and that's going to open up the produce to rot.
Right.
So the skin is important.